Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you from wherever you're joining us. Welcome. This is our other talk within the Nine-Sided Circle, which we do once monthly, every third Sunday of the month, and that is at 10:30 a.m. currently Pacific Daylight Time, as we are in daylight savings time in the U.S. So, I am one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle.
And I am the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We are so happy to have you, whether you're here live or you're watching on the YouTube replay, which brings us to our YouTube spiel. Our favorite part.
Yay! So, if you're watching us on YouTube, welcome. And if it's your first time, welcome twice. We would ask you to please consider looking down to your right and seeing that subscribe button and hitting it and becoming a subscriber to our channel. There are many benefits, which I'm going to leave you to discover on your own once you've subscribed. Also, please consider hitting the like button. The like button helps us get seen by YouTube's algorithm. And we are very happy to be seen by YouTube's algorithm because then it tells everybody about us. And we think we're kind of cool, so it would be nice for everybody else to know how cool we are.
Kind of cool.
Yeah.
And in our description below, we do also have a little bit of Nine-Sided Circle swag if you're interested in buying a t-shirt. We are hearing from people that they really enjoy them, so I have one as well. I like it. And you can also donate if you so choose, and that will help support what we're doing and help us maintain our Zoom registration and all of that stuff that we need to keep things going.
All of the things that keep us going from month to month, yes.
Yes, so thank you very much. Hope you'll consider. And with that, yeah, I guess we can leap
right in, yes.
the talk. So today we're going to be talking about Al-Khidr. This is a legendary figure who is considered a very mysterious teacher who shows up here, there, and basically everywhere. We'll be talking more about that as we go. Mushtaq, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, so this Khidr fellow, we first hear about him in the Quran. Though he's not mentioned by name, everybody pretty much agrees this is who it is. And he appears as the teacher of Moses. And I actually happen to have the verse pulled up. So I'm just going to read you the story. This is Surah 18, starting at verse 60. And remember, when Moses said to his young assistant, I will never give up until I reach the junction of the two seas, even if I travel for ages. But when they finally reached the point where the seas met, they forgot their salted fish, and it made its way into the sea, slipping away wondrously. When they had passed further, he said to his assistant, Bring us our meal. We have certainly been exhausted by today's journey. He replied, Do you remember when we rested at the rock? That is when I forgot the fish. None made me forget to mention this except Satan, and the fish made its way into the sea, miraculously. Moses responded, That is exactly what we are looking for. So they returned, retracing their footsteps. There they found a servant of ours, to whom we had granted mercy from us and enlightened with the knowledge of our own. Moses said to him, May I follow you, provided that you teach me some of the right guidance you have been taught? He said, You certainly cannot be patient enough with me. And how can you be patient with what is beyond your realm of knowledge. Moses assured him, you will find me patient. Allah willing, I will not disobey you any of your orders. He responded, then, if you follow me, do not question me about anything until I myself clarify it for you. So they set out, but after they had boarded a ship, the man made a hole in it. Moses protested, have you done this to drown these people? You have certainly done a terrible thing. He replied, did I not say you cannot have patience with me? Moses pleaded, excuse me for forgetting and do not be hard on me. So they proceeded until they came across the boy. The man killed him. Moses protested, have you killed an innocent soul who has killed no one? You have certainly done a horrible thing. He answered, did I not tell you that you cannot have patience with me? Moses replied, if I ever question you about anything after this, then do not keep me in your company, for by then I would have given you enough of an excuse. So they moved on until they came to the people of a town. They asked for food, but the people refused to give them hospitality. There they found a wall all ready to collapse. So the man set it right. Moses protested, if you wanted, you could have demanded a fee for this. He replied, this is the parting of our ways. I will explain to you what you could not bear patiently. As for the ship, it belonged to some poor people working at sea. So I intended to damage it, for there was a tyrant king ahead of them who seized every good ship by force. As for the boy, his parents were true believers, and we feared that he would pressure them into defiance and disbelief. So we hoped that their Lord would give them another, more virtuous and caring in his place. And as for the wall, it belonged to two orphan boys in the city. Under the wall was a treasure that belongs to them, and their father had been a righteous man. So your Lord willed that these children should come of age and retrieve their treasure, as a mercy from your Lord. I did not do it all on my own. This is the explanation of what you could not bear patiently. So there you have the story. And that story has appeared over and over again in different guises since it showed up in the Quran. But it always has the three things: the boat, the kid, and the wall. And the idea that there were things going on that were not apparent to the untrained eye. And some of it seems very weird, like killing the kid so that they could have a better one. That seems odd to us.
And this is a figure of Moses who is said to be a prophet in his own right, who is said to carry lots of knowledge of his own. And yet he is being challenged by this figure who apparently knows more than he does.
Yeah. And this was, it's an interesting story. Now, here's the weird thing. This story goes back way farther than you might think it does. It can be traced in parts all the way back to ancient Sumer. There is a figure in Sumerian mythology known as Nut-Napishtim. He is the guy, according to the Sumerians, who built the ark, who saved all life from being completely wiped out when God, by whatever name he was going by at that point, decided to flood the world. And it is related in Gilgamesh, how this happened. It's basically the origin of the biblical flood story under different names. So this guy is sort of the equivalent to Moses. Now, after the whole flood thing went on, he was granted immortality and lived, as the texts say, where the two waters came together. Now, in olden times, they thought this was where the Tigris and the Euphrates met at the sea. But in the time of the Moses story, it's implied that this might have in fact been where the Mediterranean and the Atlantic meet at the Rock of Gibraltar. And the Rock of Gibraltar was identified as the rock that was the sign of, hey, this is where this mysterious teacher is living. And that will become more interesting later. So since then, this guy, who is known as Al-Khidr, which means green guy, has appeared all over the place to any number of people and supposedly taught them or acted in some way to change the course of their life and initiated them. Now, there's a lot of great Sufi teachers like Ibn Arabi. They say was initiated by Khidr into his teachings. Abdul Qadir Jilani was another one, famous Sufi guy, and just a whole slew of others.
So why is he called the green one, the verdant one, the green guy?
That's an interesting question. One of the things that he was known as is Pir Isabs, which is the old guy of the greenery, which is also a place, several places in and around Iran that were Zoroastrian shrines. And the shrines were shrines to the water goddess, which you can trace back to Inanna, who was in fact the one of the movers and shakers of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, this is all by way of being very amusing and fun. And even more so when you realize that the prophet Elijah and Saint George of Saint George and the Dragon are also connected to this. And as a matter of fact, there are places where the feast day of Saint George and the feast day of Khidr occur on the same day, especially in Turkey. Using the old calendar, it falls on May the 6th, which is to say the starts at the evening of May 5th when the sun goes down and continues until May 6th when the sun goes down. And it's still celebrated in a lot of places. St. George is the patron saint of Palestine, interestingly enough. And seems to be there's like two different stories connected to him. On one side, there is this Palestinian, Syrian maybe guy who was a military general to the Emperor of Rome who is a Christian and ends up being martyred because he won't give up his faith even though the emperor wants him to. And then there is the guy who appears and kills the dragon. And they say that that happened after St. George's martyrdom. So this all begins to get interesting. So, who is this guy? According to Sufis, he's not necessarily, some people say he's a prophet, but the general consensus, I think, is that he's not. He is something more like a saint, but was granted um, something like immortality. And they say he lives, uh, people say, how can Khidr be alive? Right? He's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And the answer to this is that there are 5 levels of life, of which we live on the first level. The first level is this world. Um, but they say Khidr lives on the second level. And the second level, uh, I have a description of it here, which is better than my words. It's basically a non-local level because they say people who live here can be present in numerous places at the same time. Uh, they're not restricted by the requirements of the first level human life. They can eat and drink when they want to, but they don't have to. Uh, and they are witness to the mysteries, which is to say they live most of the time in disembodied life. So that, I don't want to say, does that make sense? Because it doesn't make sense. But
Well, let's just open it up for questions. Anybody have
yeah,
questions thus far about any of our topics so far? Thumbs up if you're doing okay and you're good with just moving on. Roland, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I couldn't really follow, actually. I'm kind of lost.
okay.
That's
This is just
honest.
by,
Thank you.
yeah, this is just by way of background. So being lost is fairly common at this point.
Yep. How about you, Malou?
I'm not so sure yet if I follow.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about a pretty disparate
Yeah,
number of things all tied to this particular
yeah.
figure.
So here we focus it into something that is more meaningful for us. It is said that there is this spiritual force which appears as a human from time to time, from person to person, and teaches them in one way or another, or delivers messages, or does something that changes the course of things. And it has been around long enough that there seems to be something to it. Can we say what? I don't know. But there definitely seems to be something to it. Now, what does it have to do with us? There is the possibility of receiving some sort of message from this, whatever it is, if one is open to it. I can give you an example. So, I had a friend who was a Mevlevi sheikh, and he had a wife. And his wife was going through a lot of hard things. And so one day she took a walk and she sat down on a park bench overlooking the sea. While she was sitting there, this old, she described him as a bum, came up and sat next to him, next to her, and they started talking. And they ended up talking for 45 minutes, an hour, after which everything that had been troubling her had settled. And she finally took a moment to look at him, and she said she noticed that he had emerald green eyes. And After the talk, he got up and kind of walked away and vanished into something. I mean, not like poof into a cloud of smoke, but just was not noticeable. From that point on, all of her questions that she had been dealing with had just resolved within her. And she went on, I mean, she's still around and is a teacher in her own right these days. Um, and when she described her experience, her husband said, I think that was Khidr. You know, the green eyes were a giveaway because there is always something green, or a fish. There's always a fish involved somewhere. So that's one simple example of how this person may show up to alter your life. I don't want to give you any details because those are private to the person, but so let me give you a couple of other stories about this sort of thing. There was once a dervish who went into the desert, and there he met an old man. The old man told him, when you go back to town, ask for Abdullah Abdullah Hajjab. And when you meet him, give him my salams and ask him to recite Al-Fatiha for the benefit of my faith. And the dervish returned to town and indeed asked for this Abdullah Hajjab, and he approached him and told him about the salams and the request from the old man. Then Abdullah recited Al-Fatiha, and afterwards he said to the dervish, you could go. The dervish, however, said, Master, I need to know who this old man was. Abdullah replied, go and do not ask questions about these things. The dervish persisted. I really need to know who this old man was. After repeating this for some time and receiving the answer from Abdullah, he received the answer from Abdullah. It was Al-Khidr. The dervish then remarked, I have already met several old men in the desert. How do you know this was Khidr? Abdullah answered, I recognized him. The dervish responded thus, this is the station of sheikhs. How is this feat possible while you are just wearing ordinary clothes? As it happened, Abdullah was not wearing clothes showing that he belonged to a Sufi order. Abdullah explained to him this way, that which the sheikhs do in the corner of a Sufi center, I am doing in the streets, on the market and in the palace. That's where the story ends, but it just begs me to ask, what does that mean? There's a message here about the difference between someone who looks the part of a Sufi and someone who does the work of a Sufi. And again, that which is not apparently heavily spiritual might be the more important of the two things. Does that make sense? Did I relate the story clear enough that you're not going, what the hell are you talking about?
What do you guys think? What do you make of that story?
I think it's interesting that a series of events is set in motion. That teaches the dervish and perhaps also the old sheikh. But Al-Khidr, he is what you would say an initiator of this new chain of events, which changes the course of destiny or things.
I think that's, yeah, I mean, that resonates for sure. Or, David, what about you? What do you think?
I really resonated with the point about how the garb isn't kind of the inner stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're always haranguing on about here, right? Like, it's so easy to just put on the clothes, but it means nothing if you're not behaving in such a way that you are leaving a positive impact on the world around you. Ailey, what about you?
Well, I think everyone you meet can be your teacher. It is how open and sensitive are you, and do you connect with your path of searching?
Absolutely. Yes. Anyone else? Sydney, are you able to talk?
I'm reading J.G. Bennett's Witness right now, and a quote from the book kind of came up as I was listening, and it seems like Khidr functions more as the will of God. Yeah, the will of God rather than his own personal will in a much larger sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be exactly the case.
Aw. Thanks, Sydney. That was great. And watching you snuggle a baby is also great. Anybody else? Jonathan's on a boat, but you know sometimes he likes to share a thought too.
Yeah, I do want to comment. What I took from the Moses and Khidr story was that Moses knew that he needs to have a teacher or regular teaching, just like any person on a path knows that they need a teacher. But it's got to be of the right level of teacher. The Khidr that Moses met seemed to be way above Moses's level. I mean, the Khidr said, I'm not for you. This is a problem that happens with many people, that they feel that they should be looking for a great teacher. And instead of just a teacher that can teach them the next level or two that they need in their life.
That's a really good
sure
point.
The Khidr, yeah, I mean, sure, if you can get an inspiration from a Khidr, but who might be much more advanced than you, but they're not going to want to spend time with you. They've got bigger fish to help. So if you want a day-to-day, month-to-month teacher, you've got to lower the bar in your search.
Perhaps so. And I'm thinking of what Ailey shared earlier about how anyone has the potential to be a teacher for each of us. And also I'm thinking of, oh gosh, it's just, let's slipping my mind. Okay, yeah, I think it's a Rumi quote, right? If you tell something, if you tell a truth to someone that they are not prepared for or that they can't wrap their head around yet, it's as if you're lying to them, and it can overwhelm them and upset them and confuse them and leave them in more trouble than they may have been otherwise. So, yeah, sometimes we need to be where we're at and receive insights appropriate to where we're at, and then we can move forward from there. Thanks, Michelle.
I think that that is a very good quote, and you did it well, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So here we have this idea of this archetypal force of some sort. Some people say, yeah, he's a human being who's been alive all this time. I mean, the story of Moses and Khidr reflects a couple of earlier stories. If you chase it back through history, it's been around for a long time. The earliest I know is a story of Khidr and the archangel Gabriel, who basically put him through the same sort of thing. You know, you can't bear my teachings, and yes, I can, and then all the questioning, and then finally at the end it's revealed that it's Gabriel, and he reveals himself in his angelic form, and Khidr is knocked back, and that may be the point where he was initiated into this, according to that story. Interestingly, and this is going to probably be the last thing I want to say about the mythology of this, is that St. George slaying the dragon is an echo of Gilgamesh's search for immortality. Because Gilgamesh ends up talking to this Noah-like figure, and finally he tells him, at the bottom of the sea is a plant that if you swim down, you get it, and you eat this plant, it will restore your youth. And so Gilgamesh does this, and he gets the plant, but a serpent attacks him and takes the plant from him. And that serpent and the dragon that St. George slays have been implied to be the same beast. And I just found that interesting. But of what use is this to us? Here's the use. It is possible for each of every one of you who is listening to Noor and I today to make your own connection at a level like this and to be inspired. The prerequisite for that is knowing that it's possible. Now, whether you want to think that this is a human being who's been alive since antediluvian times, or if it is an archetype within the collective unconscious of humanity, whatever, it doesn't matter. You just need to know that it's there. And you need to be open to it. How do you be open to it? In the story, what the Quran doesn't tell you is that Moses was instructed to take this fish. And it's a salt fish. The fish is dead. The fish has been dead. It's been covered in salt and dried out so that it will be preserved for a journey. And when he said, whoever told him said, when you get to the point that the fish has disappeared, that's where you're going to find the person you're looking for. So the fact that the fish escapes and swims away at this point is a little interesting because it's a salt fish. As anybody who's dealt with salt fish knows, they don't usually swim. So we see at this point a theme of perhaps resurrection, but at least of claiming life. That which was inanimate becomes animate again. And this is where you find the hidden master, the servant of God who is willing to teach you if you are willing to listen. So, in order to be able to make contact with this archetypal figure, you have to do a couple of things. One, you have to be willing to be open to it. Two, you have to cultivate your patience. And that's what the story says. Khidr says to Moses, "You're not patient enough for my teachings." And three, you have to look beneath the surface structure of things. Four, you can't take any of it seriously.
Yeah, that's one thing Mushtaq and I were touching on in our conversation prior, is that Peter is he's got a sacred clown quality to him in that he is, as you said, rascally. You know, he doesn't necessarily do things in a straightforward way, at least as we might perceive it.
Yeah, and that's very important. Also, people get their ego involved. There are lots and lots of people out there who say, I have been initiated by Khidr into my own Sufi order now. People who go around saying that are almost undoubtedly frauds, in my humble opinion. The people who have really received the initiation of Khidr tend to not talk about it. They don't need to claim the authority of another individual, let alone a quasi-mythical spiritual being. Does that make sense? So if you run across somebody in a big turban who's telling you, yeah, Khidr came and he initiated me, and now I am the coolest of the cool, and I'm the greatest of all the Sufis and all of that kind of stuff, keep your hand on your wallet. So you can set up formal things to make it easier to encounter Khidr. One of the best ways to do this is during that evening of May 5th to evening of May 6th period, you actually celebrate the Feast of Khidr and make intention that you want to learn from this figure. Now, how do you do this? There's a couple of different ways. One important thing, if you're a guy and you have a woman in your life, whether it's your wife, your lover, your mother, your sister, whatever, you bring her roses. Go figure. If you're a woman and you have a man in your life, you bring him a book. Why these two things? Also, chocolate is appropriate at any time. So on the evening of May 5th, you make a gift of either a book or flowers to somebody who represents the opposite aspect of who you are. And as far as I can tell, there's no rule that it has to be opposite sex. It usually is because that's what they talk about, but it doesn't have to be. Now, why do you think this is? What is the significance of the rose and the book? Don't everybody answer at once.
Anyone want to brave a guess? Yeah, go
To
for it.
bring
Okay.
love and knowledge,
What's that?
to give love and knowledge. The rose is the
Yes.
love, and the book is knowledge or wisdom.
Yep.
Good. Or how about you?
I was going to say desire and knowledge.
Yeah. Cool.
Malu, you know the answer to this. What is it?
Mm, I would say the book is a representation of wanting to learn, and maybe the rose is a representation of wanting to love.
Yep. So, why does the woman get the rose and the man get the book? My little sister knew the answer to this. She would tell you, because boys are stupid. One could say that that aspect of oneself, the young aspect, the active aspect, needs educating. The yin aspect needs respect. And chocolate because that's good for everybody.
So there's one way to perhaps initiate a connection with Khidr there. Yeah?
Hmm. Well, that's the start. This is a feast day. So, what you do is you have a feast. You have friends get together. You cook food together. You make community. And you leave an empty seat at the table. And that empty seat represents Khidr's seat. Each of the people who is at the table will take some bit of food and put it on the plate with a wish for illumination on some subject. And at the end, the woman of the house takes the plate outside and leaves the food as an offering. That's how it's done. The worst that can come from that is you get a good meal with your friends. The best is that sometime in that year, as long as you keep the awareness of its possibility, you will get a message delivered to you that will initiate change in you. Now, the message will not be, hey, guess what? David, you're the highest sheikh in Sufism now. Get a big turban. It ain't going to be that.
It could
It
be
will
though.
be, it could be, but it doesn't quite work that way. What it will be is something that can provide a catalyst for change for you. And all you have to do is be aware enough that when it comes, you notice it. Then, when May 5th/6 rolls around again, you have the feast of Khidr and St. George, and you talk about what you have learned. Did Khidr send you a message? It's easier if you're in the Middle East from Turkey down through Palestine because there are shrines to Khidr all over, all the way down into Yemen and the Emirates and such things because he got around a lot. And you can go and spend time at the shrines. But, you know, you could always build a shrine here. So if you were to build a shrine to Khidr, what would it look like? There could be a dead fish.
Just a packet of saltfish just for Khidr.
Yeah.
What would yours look like, Mushtaq?
It has to be somewhere out in a forest, a place that's green and where there's water. And it would look like a little stone arrangement, perhaps with a fish, a stone fish. For me, I would get a fish fetish from Zuni and use that just because that's me.
I know, that seems appropriate for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it would just be somewhere where I knew and could go up and sit and meditate. And no, Khidr is not going to appear there. That's too obvious. He might appear as a park ranger after you get back going, why have you been parked here so long?
I think I would make mine with a bunch of still green branches and just like weave a little shelter. And then perhaps weave, offerings of dried fish.
Dried fish.
Yeah.
Somebody will be happy that you came there.
Yeah. And that's, whatever's living there gets to join in on the feast.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think? Is this the most bizarre thing that we've done so far?
Yeah, feel free to hop in, guys. At this point, I think we're wrapping up. So, any thoughts you want to share, feel free.
Well, especially the story with Moses, it keeps making me think that Khidr is a kind of shock point.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
And actually, it made me also think about Odin in the sagas because they're so full of stories of the kings doing things, and all of a sudden Odin shows up and changes the direction of the story. This is usually when Odin meets the what should we call it, the Christianizing kings. But but I suppose in almost any culture there is always this story of someone meeting someone who interjects this new energy. Yeah.
I think that's a really great corollary, I guess we could say, or, a mirroring of this phenomenon of the figure who comes in and just like zaps in a change, you know, a shock
Yeah, it's like
point, as you say. Yeah.
yeah, it's like someone who's not attached to the drama that we deal with.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can see that from the Moses and Khidr story that for most people, there are valid reasons why they would not have done the things that Khidr did. And that's not a suggestion that we should go around killing young boys and such, because you know we're generally driven by our egos and by our egoic impulses. We do not have that second level reality awareness typically to know the consequences of what we're doing.
Yeah, or asking for. Because I
Yeah.
suppose a lot of times when we ask for teaching or for a teacher, we're kind of saying, I already know what I need, give it to me.
Yeah.
And so part of the teaching is showing that you don't know what you're asking for. You should be looking at something else.
Yes, definitely.
When you were talking about the shrines, it just popped up that yesterday I was on a walk and there was just a giant dead fish lying at the shore. And I was like,
There you go. You already had your message. And you never know what's going to come from that dead fish, other than happy seagulls.
Very cool. Yeah. Thanks, Malu. Anybody else? Jonathan, how about you? I'm just going to call on everyone before we wrap up, I guess. Nope. Okay. Oh, nothing to add, you said?
Right.
All right. Well, enjoy your trip. Be safe. Roland, how about you?
I was thinking about the plainclothes Sufi in the story, and I just heard an interview with the cellist Yo-Yo Ma, and it was very interesting what he said about his motivations and how he does things, and it sounded very much like I heard what he said, and I thought you could be a Sufi, and that reminded me of this plainclothes Sufi situation going on, because I was thinking that how did you get there? Like what inspired you to? There's so many people making music and playing instruments, but how did you get to that sort of inspiration? And maybe it was Khidr.
Maybe. And you find this guy or some semblance of him in so many different cultures over so many different eras. It makes you think there's something going on there.
Thanks, Roland. Haley, do you have anything you want to add?
It is a big story, and to be at that point to meet the hitter, I believe it is very important to learn about what's the difference between the personality and your essence. That's very important, and then you can, because one of the biggest motivation is your willpower, and you have to know yourself very very well, and what is it what I want? Is it from my what you said, my ego or my personality, or is it from my essence? So that is because otherwise it's only becomes rituals, and it is just sand that's uh, flow through your fingers. You can't get it right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that brings up a good point. We may not always use the term essence here. We tend to use the vocabulary of the awake state. But when we are in the awake state and we're really attuned to that, that is how we get to know what Ailey, I would imagine, what Ailey is calling essence here.
Yeah, same difference, as we like to say.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and it's yeah. In some ways, the words don't matter all that much.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it's accessible for people, these
Yeah.
different words that we may use, and to see how they're all connected. So thank you, Ailey. I think you brought up a really good point. Yes.
I think it's very very important to have a good connection with the other.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the best connection to have with another is that you know all the things that you have learned. It is not from yourself. It is you. That is mental food you are digesting to make it yourself, and how you can grow. And it is in this life is what kind of food do I need to develop to be in balance with all the things what is happening around me. So
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. David, how about you?
I'm good. Nothing to add.
Great. Cool. So, I guess we can go to Brady Bunch mode, no?
Yeah, we can go to Brady Bunch mode. So, the essence of this talk that we've done today is the idea that there is a force for inspiration. And that's one way to think of Khidr, is that Khidr inspires. Uh, he moves you towards something that you perhaps have not seen. And when I say he, Khidr has a feminine side that I didn't want to get into talking about today, but he is also associated with the Sumerian goddess Inanna and a Zoroastrian goddess of the waters and greenery.
Yeah, you mentioned that in passing.
Yeah,
There's something about this, urging life force going on.
yeah. So that's what we got.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone, for our other talk. And of course, we'll be doing this again in the evening at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And Fort says it's interesting that the Empress of Tarot card 3 is wearing green.
Yep.
Yeah, she isn't always depicted that way, but it is commonly depicted that way, and it's definitely relevant. Yeah, explored. All
So
right.
let this thing sink in and don't pay too much mind to it. And we will undoubtedly check back in on this at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, folks.
So we can wave to each other and say goodbye and thank you. Yay,
And,
all right. And we will talk to you soon.
All right.